Released on October 13, 2008 in North America, Dead Space is a survival horror game where players must fight off undead aliens and fix things in order to escape an abandoned spaceship. It was critically acclaimed when it first came out and still stands as one of the best horror games of all time. Everything works together to create an interesting, unsettling environment while also providing fun, engaging gameplay. Not to mention, the story about what happened on the Ishimura and Unitology is quite interesting and keeps the player going, so they can learn more about the horrific events they weren't around for. Without further ado, let's give the original Dead Space a deeper look. In Dead Space, players take control of Isaac Clarke, an engineer, as he and his two other crewmates work to get off the giant spaceship known as the Ishimura due to the dangerous necromorphs roaming the area. Before we get into the story, let's talk a little bit about the general gameplay. The gist of the game is to survive by killing off the infected aliens known as necromorphs and go around the ship fixing up things so the remaining crew from the Kellion can get off the Ishimura. There's a number of unique necromorphs, and the player must deal with them in certain ways. Some of the more nimble enemies will move out of the way of gunfire, or crouch in order to get to Isaac without taking too much damage. Anyway, as the player goes throughout the game, they'll be able to find new weapons, and upgrade their suit by fighting their schematics, and uploading them to the store. New guns make it easier to kill off certain necromorphs and deal with certain situations. New suits allow for the player to take more damage and hold more items. Both the guns and the suit can be upgraded by power modules that are scattered throughout the game, and they can also be used to open up certain doors that have special items and logs, which I'll get into later. Players can also use stasis in order to slow down objects or necromorphs that move too fast, and kinesis in order to move things out of the way, or they can throw objects at enemies to save ammo. If the player gets lost or isn't sure where to go, they can hold down the navigation button in order to get a blue light that illuminates from Isaac's hand that will show the player where to go. There are zero gravity sections where players can roam any part of the room without having to worry about a magnetic force pulling them down. There's also vacuum rooms in which the player has a limited amount of air before they suffocate. And while there's usually oxygen tanks around these places, the player should make it their objective to get out of there as fast as possible because of how fast things can go wrong. Well, enough of the general gameplay. Let's move on to the story of this game to explain how the characters got on this desolate ship and dive into what kind of situation they're in. The Kellion crew, consisting of Isaac Clarke, Zach Hammond, Kendra Daniels, and a few other crewmates, investigate an odd incident that happened on the spaceship, the Ishimura. Isaac has a personal investment in this mission because his girlfriend, Nicole, was on the ship and even made a distress video. The crew make it to the main hub, but then are attacked by some necromorphs. The three main characters make it out alive, but Isaac is separated from Hammond and Kendra. But this isn't necessarily a bad thing, as Isaac can do a couple of things on his end to make sure they get off the ship. While the crew is off doing their own things, a mysterious character named Chalice Mercer interrupts their signals and discourages them from pushing on and just accept their death. He speaks rather ominously. It's hard to understand the exact message of his words. Before this, Kendra mentions something about an artifact known as the Marker, and apparently it affects people's minds by making them mentally unstable and causing dementia. This marker also seems to have connections to the religion known as Unitology. This will all be discussed later. Undeterred by the man's speech, Isaac meets up with Hammond, and the leader commands Isaac to go to the defense system of the ship in order to stop some asteroids. After preventing the Ishimura from being damaged by some space rocks, Hammond turns on the automatic defense system, and Kendra informs Isaac the air in the ship is becoming unbreathable, so the engineer goes around the ship to find a poison to kill off that is what's poisoning the air. During which, Isaac runs into Chalice and furthers his speech about accepting death. This happens a couple more times throughout the story, and Chalice will even hack doors to try and halt the Kellion crew's progress. Isaac cleans the air, and Kendra informs him there's a way they can send an SOS signal so they can possibly be saved. During this mission, Isaac sees Nicole, and she utters some of the fake things Chalice said, but she helps her boyfriend with the mission. After all, she wants to live too. With the SOS signal sent out, the USM Valor receives the message, but unfortunately, they're gonna dock into an escape pod full of necromorphs, and sure enough, when they arrive, they're killed by the abominations. They aren't completely unsavable yet. Hammond mentions there's a ship on the flight deck, but it needs a singularity cord, so once again, Isaac is errand boy. During this mission, Terrence Kyne, the chief science officer of the Ishimura, contacts Isaac and pleads for help. This will be important later. Isaac gets the important part and then finds Hammond, only for the commander to be killed by a tank necromorph. Isaac escapes, but Kendra tells him they need navigation cards for the ship, so it's back to another run around the Ishimura. With the navigation cards obtained, Terrence invites Isaac to the executive room and tells him about this gigantic, dangerous biomass that could kill the crew if they leave, named the Hive Mind, so he suggests they return the marker to its previous colony and get the hell out of there after that. Isaac gets the marker on the small ship, and just as they're about to leave, Kendra kills Terrence and leaves. It turns out, she was working for the government all along, and the marker from Agnes 7 is actually a man-made one that was based on the real artifact. It was created to see if it was possible to mimic the effects of the original marker, and boy, was that plan successful. As Kendra leaves, Nicole contacts Isaac, and the two recall the ship back to the Ishimura, so they can leave and put the marker back in its original spot. They arrive on Agnes 7, return the marker, but then Kendra shows up again and tells Isaac he isn't immune from the effects of the marker. Case in point, Nicole was never there, and Kendra proves it by showing him her suicide tape, which Isaac had watched multiple times, but never finished. As Kendra is about to board the ship to escape, the Hive Mind kills her, and now Isaac must take the huge entity down. With the abomination done for, Isaac boards the ship and gets the hell out of there. The engineer is finally safe. Or is he? A few more things. Players can pick up audio, visual, and text logs throughout their playthrough, which adds more story to how the marker and unitology influenced the people and the events that happened on the Ishimura. It reveals that a man named Michael Altman whistle-blew the government's cover-up about the marker, and that unitology focuses on the death of people in order for humanity to evolve. As mentioned before, Isaac hallucinates Nicole as if she is in the same room as him, but Isaac will also imagine that she's calling him on his rig or trying to send a message through the screens in certain parts of the Ishimura. Anyways, this story is quite interesting and deep. It keeps players on the edge of their seats as they run around the Ishimura and increases the player out by isolating them from the rest of the crew, which means Isaac can only get so much help, if any, if he gets pinned down by those necromorphs. The religion of unitology isn't given too much depth in this game, but the fact that it revolves around death ties everything together. It explains why the necromorphs are so ruthless and bloodthirsty, and why so many people died on the ship. Overall, the gameplay is simply amazing. There's so many ways the player can go through the game. They can go the regular route of getting every gun and upgrading them. They can also just upgrade their plasma cutter and suit, or they can do something in between. The player can also just make these decisions on impulse and still have fun and get through the game without too many bumps in the road. Not to mention, some of the smaller fun things that can be done, like the basketball minigame that gives the player prizes if they decide to play and get a good score. Everything comes together to create a unique and worthwhile experience. The environment of Dead Space really pushes the horror of isolation, and that something really horrible happened on the Ishimura. If that wasn't enough, the lights aren't fully functional, they often flicker and don't illuminate all the way, and there's random drawings and speeches along the walls to show the desperation and slow to center the insanity among the crew members. And if it wasn't hard enough to spot necromorphs, they travel in the vents, so the player never knows when they're going to get attacked by the abominations. Not to mention, sometimes the aliens scurry away and only give the player a glimpse at them, so they don't know whether or not it's a small scare or if they're about to be attacked. They can be seen carrying the bodies of humans they just killed, which makes sense with the unitology thing, and this fact was even mentioned by Kendra in the game. While still on these abominations, they come in all shapes and sizes, which not only makes the gameplay more interesting, but also demonstrates how versatile the marker is in messing up humans. Aliens aren't the only scary things though. There's crewmates on the ship that kill themselves in order to ascend to the next stage, according to unitology. Next, I want to talk about the design of the ship. The Ishimura is this huge planet cracker that many people can live on. So while there's plenty of rooms for work and maintenance, there's also plenty of areas that were meant for leisure and relaxation. This is furthered by the poster on the walls, which range from safety tips about certain pieces of equipment to advertisements to the products on board. A screen hangs above every door to guide people and the player to the place they need to be, and it demonstrates the amount of different rooms that the ship has. While still in the Ishimura, the weapons Isaac can buy on the ship make sense too. Every tool Isaac uses corresponds to something that can be used to fix something on the ship, like how the Ripper can be used to cut a wire or door open, or how the Force Gun could be used to push something into place. Not to mention, Isaac is an engineer, so he's a natural with these guns and knows how to use them in very appropriate and inappropriate ways. And since Isaac is an engineer, he's got a protective suit to prevent injuries and other harmful things from happening. As he upgrades the suit, it gets more bearings in order to take more damage, so the wearer doesn't get hurt as much. While still talking about the rig, the game's UI is beautifully done. Most shooter games will show the player's health, ammo, and other important information in the HUD, but Dead Space doesn't really have a heads-up display. The player can see their health and stasis bar on their back, and the gun's ammo show up whenever Isaac readies his weapon. The menus look like a projection from the rig, and the same can be said for the video calls. This UI is beautiful, and works so well due to how smooth everything is. No HUD also makes the game creepier, because the player can see everything, and there's no kind of information to give the player some comfort, even if it's a small amount. Now, let's talk about the animations next. They're really good, but let's start with the humans first. Everybody's quite animated. It's clear what kind of emotions a character is feeling, and nobody feels static or like they're dead inside. Whether it be a video call or an in-person interaction, the cutscenes are engaging and aren't boring. Anyways, the Necromorphs are brutal with their methods of execution. They don't care what it takes to kill the humans. They will do anything to ensure the downfall of humanity, or should I say the evolution of humanity, because, you know, the whole unitology thing and how death is tied to it. Some of the death animations are real unnerving. Like, it's astonishing how the Necromorphs have no remorse about murder, or even a second thought for that matter. My favorite one is the head crawlers whenever they decapitate Isaac and implant themselves in his body. That one will always freak me out. But otherwise, I don't have anything else to say about the visuals for Dead Space. The soundtrack of Dead Space is quite creepy and works with the horror on screen to unnerve the player. Most of the time the player is on board the Ishimura, the ambience of the ship plays through their speakers, but when things get tense, Jason Gray shocks the player with harmonic cacophonies to get under the player's skin. Not to mention, the ambience is disturbing too. Things get too quiet sometimes. The Ishimura is supposed to be filled with the sounds of people doing their own thing, but instead, all the player hears is the inner workings of the ship, while the Necromorphs roam around. Besides the music, the voice acting is pretty good too. It really adds on to the characters' personalities and feelings. Kendra is distressed for a lot of the game, but still has the confidence they can finish the mission. Hammond is stern with his orders and tries to keep his cool in a tense situation, and Nicole has this smooth, calming voice to lure Isaac in and obey her. And while Isaac doesn't speak, his grunts of distress when being attacked are convincing and unsettle the player because of how expressive he is with them. Speaking of Isaac's expressions, in vacuum sections, players can hear Isaac gasping for air whenever his oxygen starts to run thin. There's also no ambience during these times, so every sound effect is amplified tenfold. Another great way of disturbing the player and leaving them hanging on the edge of their seat. Now, onto the sound effects. The sound effects in this game really have some oomph and power to them. The guns sound like they pack a punch and were made for just engineering. There's a disgusting gore noise whenever the Necromorphs stab Isaac or whenever Isaac walks over their goop. And the Ishimura's interface noises are small, but nice little features. But nothing is more disturbing than some of the noises the Necromorphs make. They sound so unworldly. Like, how is it possible a human has turned to the point where they no longer sound familiar, and the only thing that can come out of their mouth is not of this earth? Most of the creatures will make a grunt while advancing towards the player, but others will make a dull, droning moan like the Slender Necromorphs. Or will scream in a distortive manner like the Wall Necromorphs. And with that, that's all I had to say about the sound department for this game. Dead Space has a few extras to talk about. First of all, New Game Plus. Once players beat the game, they're allowed to play the game again with all the upgrades and things they obtained through their first playthrough. They're also given a bunch of credits and a couple of power modules. This makes it a lot easier for the player to get all the different suits and use all the guns the game has to offer. Speaking of beating the game, players are also granted a new suit that completely changes its look and provides incredible protection and an extra large inventory. There was also DLC suits that did the same thing. Next, there's an impossible mode that really amps things up. The player has very limited health, and the necromorphs are harder to kill. Only the truest of Dead Space fans will be able to clear that one. There's really only one issue I have with this game. This may seem silly, but it always kind of bothered me, and that is Isaac doesn't say a word throughout the entire game. Like, he does know he's fighting for his life, and that at any moment he could be killed, yet he doesn't utter anything. Not to mention, there's people that talk to him, so even if he doesn't say a lot, most people would say something to assure the other party they know what they said. Isaac doesn't even talk to his girlfriend when they meet up, so what's the dude's problem? Otherwise, I don't have any other issues to talk about. Dead Space is a masterpiece of a video game. Everything comes together to create engaging, fun, various gameplay, an interesting, deep story, and a disturbing environment that'll keep players creeped out no matter where they are. That's kind of everything Dead Space has to offer. A 12-chapter story that is well written and fun to play through. 6 different weapons that have unique purposes and work with the fact Isaac's an engineer. 6 suit upgrades that make it easier to deal with the bloodthirsty necromorphs. Some of the best UI design with how well it works with the gameplay and visuals. Creepy music that'll freak the player out and raise the hairs on their skin. And an impossible mode for the most hardcore players to beat so they can brag about it. Dead Space is such an experience from start to finish. There's hardly a dull moment throughout the game. After all, the necromorphs are everywhere and they're looking to kill. The puzzles are fairly challenging, the combat sections are exciting, and the sound department furthers the tension of the conflicts that happen. And until next time, Make us
Isaac, make us whole again.